we would always do presents like on Christmas Eve, but not all the presents. Even when we were older, like Santa presents, like on Christmas Day, we would give mum and dad their presents on Christmas Eve for some reason, and like other family things. And yeah, it was just a weird, quirky thing we did.
Christmas or Thanksgiving?
Christmas, because in Ireland we don't have Thanksgiving.
Santa or no?
Yeah, Santa. I'm a Santa fan.
How big was your nativity set?
Like in the house? I don't think we had one. Is that?
That's okay.
Is that sacrilegious?
Yes. You were here by band from this interview?
Stuffing, cranberry sauce.
Did you do turkey?
Yeah, we did turkey. But I like turkey. I feel like you have to have turkey for it to be Christmas. But I don't feel like turkey's anyone's favorite. Am I wrong by that? Like, I feel like I could take it or leave it, but it needs to be there.
Have you tried fried turkey?
You know what? I haven't. Okay. And that, maybe now that I'm in America. Yeah.
Fried turkey.
Yeah. One of the girls we live with is Canadian. We did Canadian Thanksgiving last week, and I grilled turkey legs for the first time, and they were pretty nice. Yeah, when I was younger, I would have done the nativity, probably shepherd 4, or like, you know, or sheep 3, probably Oh Holy Night, or is it Night Divine? What's it actually called? Oh Holy Night. I mean, the melody in the chorus of that is just so exquisite, and the chord movement, it's beautiful. It's hard to get past. I would define worship as a realignment of God in his rightful place in our lives and our hearts. So not that God ever moves, but I guess we do. And so repositioning him in respects to everything else that we have. And I think you can do that in a lot of ways, but one of the ways is song. Probably in a lot of ways, my dad, I have to thank for a lot of what I'm doing. He's a songwriter. He's always written songs for the Salvation Army. He's written lyrics. And so I grew up very much around songwriting, and it was always a big part of what we did. He was also like conducted the choir and like played in brass bands. He played tuba, and I played cornet, which is like a smaller trumpet, you don't know. And I was terrible. Like, I would pretend. I remember just sitting second row, just miming, pretending to play the notes, and everyone would have known, but I thought I was getting away with it as a 10-year-old. And then in later years, I joined a church. There was a great guy. I actually had quite a few really, really helpful people along the way that kind of pulled me along and brought me along, just local church guys, and really grateful for them. It's the repositioning of God in our lives, or the true positioning is maybe a better way of saying it. And so I think for me, I can do that. I think the Lord's Prayer is actually a really beautiful sort of way to align that. There's a N.T. Wright book where he lays it out. I think it's literally called the Lord's Prayer. And one of the things I find really beautiful about that is he goes through every line and the importance of every line and why it's in that order and how it's effective. And so a while ago, I got in this practice, and I don't do it every day. I should. Sometimes I forget, but I get this practice of almost rewriting the Lord's Prayer, and I write it maybe not like a poem, but like a devotional. And I'll basically just say the same thing, but in different words. So like, dear great cosmic Father of the universe, like, who owns the stars, something like that. And then that'll be Our Father in Heaven, and I'll move down. And I find that really helpful as far as like a daily practice of, I guess, worship, because you're putting God back in his rightful place. You're recontextualizing him in your life, making him present. And not that he isn't present, but I guess that's kind of the point, is that we have such a way of forgetting his presence, of like ignoring it, I guess. And there's a certain liturgy to it, because you're actually practicing the way that Jesus prayed in a new way, I guess. I come from, Salvation Army, which is kind of like, it's got Anglican flavors and kind of some pre-Pentecostal flavors. Like, it's an interesting mix of a few worlds. Presbyterian, Methodist, it's kind of all of them thrown together. Growing up in Ireland, it's very poetry sort of heavy. I grew up doing speech and drama, which is like this. I've rethought of this a few weeks ago, and I was like, it's so wild that I did this. The funniest thing, we would stand up, we'd memorize poems, or like a monologue or something, and you would competitively recite the poem in this room of like, there's probably, I don't know, like probably 100 parents there to watch their kids or whatever, and each kid would get up and recite the same poem, and whoever like recited it best won the competition. It's such a funny thing that we did, but I did that for years, and I'm super grateful for it in hindsight, because I was getting exposed to all this amazing poetry that I think then embedded its way into my writing. And even structurally in my writing, there's things that I really can't escape from now, like rhyme patterns or syllable count in lines, like the intentionality of all that and the meter of how something sounds. So I do feel like that Irish poetry actually really influenced my writing, and I've always with that been a massive fan of hymns. And again, because they do mirror in the same sort of way, like a great hymn reads like a great poem. And so I've got a few hymn books, like old hymn books at home that I'll just sit and read, especially some of the ones that just lasted the ages. Like the truths in them are so profound, and they still, the poetry of it still cuts so deep. And I think if it's lasted 200 years, there must be something pretty special about that. So I would say hymns are probably one of the main influences actually on my writing. It's such a beautiful thing to think about, the fact that like this is not just a new, even when you look at the Bible and the way that it's collected over the time that it's collected, these groups of people like adding their stories and their faith, and the way that unfolds is really beautiful. It's often in hindsight that you see that stuff, right? It's like you'll be experiencing things in your life and you don't realize how God's moving and the pieces he's pulling it together until you look back and you're like, oh wow, there was so much intentionality to all of those things that now I see it. So I don't know if I have a fully accurate answer for right now, right here. In my life, I probably have been on this journey of like rediscovering God, like grappling with him, wrestling for the last couple of years, that I've probably been so consumed by that I haven't been able to fully have my pulse on much else. My wife, my manager, Chris, he's also a great friend. We do have a great community of people around. I feel like in moving, I recently left Sydney, moved to LA like a year and a half ago. And so I don't know if I have that like kind of older, wiser mentor figure yet. Like I feel like all my friends are kind of the same age and peers, and we kind of help each other. But I do feel like I like that at this point in my life. But I'm grateful for a great community that kind of acts at least in a pseudo mentorship kind of way. And my wife's amazing. She definitely tells me the truth, brutally so. I think you've got people that want honesty and truth and transparency. I mean, I think it's been a big part of the last couple of years just across the board. You've seen all these big companies kind of get torn down because of a lack of that, and other organizations, etc. So I think that could probably only be a good thing. No more like doing stuff in the shadows. Like I think pulling things out into the light. And let's be honest, let's be open. Let's not like pretend that we have it all together. Let's not pretend things are great. Let's not, I think it's that. It's like the pursuit of honesty and like real truth, deep truth. And I think in that, there's a dark side to that too. There's a shadow to that. But I think especially in that, my generation, and maybe more so the one just slightly below, there's a willingness to just tear down for the sake of tearing down, which I think is the maybe shadow to the same pursuit, because that's not helpful either. But I do think at its heart, the driving force is honesty and transparency, and I think that's a good thing. I think Jesus would like that. I wrote a song, it's on the record, called The Jesus I Know, and it kind of starts to grapple with some of those concepts and challenges. I was in this place where I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. Like I knew I wanted to write music. I wanted to write worship music, but it just wasn't right. Like I was writing these songs and they didn't seem like they were landing, and it just wasn't connected. It felt like bad versions of songs that already existed. Like a song Chris Tomlin would have wrote when he was 12. Like that's what they felt like. One time I was at a conference, I was serving at this conference, and I was walking this woman to her car. It was raining. And halfway through the walking, she stops me, looks me in the eyes and says, "Are you a writer?" I was like, "Yeah, actually I am." And she started prophesying over me and was like, "Well, you have the ability to express deep truth, and that's what you need to do." And that, it shook me, because it's one of the times in my life where I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I'd heard from God. It hit me deep on the inside. And I went away, and out of that, I kind of started writing songs that, to me, as opposed to trying to write a song that was going to work in church, or trying to write a song that's going to work on radio, or trying to write a song that's whatever those intentions were, I started just writing songs directly to God. Almost like love letters feels like a bit of a flippant or new agey way to say it, but kind of like that, like just Psalms, I guess. Like this is from me directly to God. It's actually not really about whether it fits some predestined purpose. Like this isn't about it being even working in church. Like that really wasn't my driver. It was like, this is for God, and I hope it's helpful to other people. And it wasn't until I did that, stopped trying to write songs that were going to work, and just started writing songs that it was first and foremost a message to God, I guess, or a prayer. Those songs actually did start working in church. Does that make sense? Like it wasn't until I took those labels off that actually had something to offer and that people would actually want to sing. And you start to learn what works. You start to learn, like, if I write a song like this, or I've studied songwriting as well, like pretty intensely. So I kind of know which boxes to tick to make a chorus singable. But every time I try to do that, I write the worst songs. And I'm constantly fighting with myself to remember, as opposed to starting with the end goal, like, I want this song to be successful, or I want a gazillion people to sing this song, or I want whatever that thing is. Starting there and working backwards and being like, okay, so cool, this song should probably do this and this and this. You need to start here. What I actually want to say to God, or what's God saying to me, or what revelation do I have to offer people? And you work from that point. And if it never gets all the way here, that's fine, because that was never the point to begin with. But I feel like reversing it is kind of how you start to lose some of those labels. A few years ago, I was writing with a couple of good friends, Marty and Dean. We literally sat down with the objective, like I said, of like, let's write a song. And it's not an unholy objective. The objective was like, let's write a song that's going to be helpful for church. But essentially it's like, let's write a song that ticks all these boxes that everyone was going to be able to sing. We spent the whole day doing it, and we are just struggling. Like, nothing's working. It doesn't feel heartfelt. It just feels like another song. We start talking about Irish hymns, actually. Like, we start talking about poetry and hymns. We were having dinner in this Irish pub in Sydney, so they were reading like the poetry on the walls. And we're like, well, let's just go back and write something we love, like a really Celtic sounding hymn. And so we go back in, losing the objective of let's write a song that's really singable that everyone in their church is going to love, to let's just write something that we love that's inspiring to us. And we end up writing the verse to praise the name. And then from that, like, Marty went away and kind of finished the chorus, and we end up having this song, which ends up still being my most sort of sung songs in churches. I've been on this journey the last few years of, like I said, like wrestling with God on a few things. It was probably pre-pandemic, and I kind of had this moment where the worldview that I built, like the faith that I'd put together, I realized some of the building blocks weren't working anymore. I'd probably built on a few of the wrong things, maybe some bad theology, maybe some, like, you know, you just grab things from church and the church you grew up in, and you put this thing together, you try to build the house the best you can. And I realized the house was kind of crumbling. And so I went on this journey of trying to figure out, okay, well, in over the course of my life, where I was like, okay, I need to get back to the basics of who do I actually understand God to be? What do I know for certain? But that's a really hard thing to try and wrestle with while you're also trying to lead people in worship. I'm also trying to lead people to a positive place, or maybe a place that I'm not even in that very moment. But I don't want to abandon what I feel like is my calling, but I don't want to be insincere. And so I went on this imposter syndrome kind of horrible journey. That's what pretty much the whole record's about, is me exploring this. And it's a array of things, from songs kind of talking about it and worship songs where I'm actively trying to refocus myself and point myself forwards towards like a greater truth. I think with the record, I really tried to like overshare almost my journey in the whole thing, in the sense that I felt like if I was feeling this, maybe there's other people in churches that are feeling similarly, but don't want to just give up. One of the things I noticed was in churches, especially during COVID, of like a lot of churches had a big drop off in attendance, and you have these groups of people that I think with the space and with the time spent away, a lot of people in that started to grow like cynical and cold. And I think because they're probably having a similar experience to me, they're all of a sudden wrestling with their worldview and their understanding of God, and they're trying to figure out, have I built my life on all the right things? Have I got God figured out like I thought I did? I think in that I saw a lot of people, turn cynical, and I really didn't want to do that. But I wasn't feeling great inside either. So I was fighting the whole time for the light, like fighting to see the light at the end of the tunnel and find some hope in the midst of this situation. And I knew that God was real, but it was just trying to like, dig into that and really figure out what that meant. Across the album, that's kind of what I do. I share the journey, hoping that those people that are feeling like that, feeling like me, don't feel like they have to like give up on church, don't feel like they have to give up on God, don't feel like they need to go cynical and like, and dark, really, but can be truthful about where they're at, be honest about the issues they're having and the problems they're having and the doubts they're having and maybe issues they're having with their church or whatever it is, but still look towards something positive, still look towards the light. And all my favorite art, I mean, David is the best at it in the Bible. It's like you're pointing, it acknowledges the heaviness of the situation, but points towards something greater always. And I guess that's what I was trying to do. And so if God's teaching me anything, it's like to persevere in that and fight for truth, fight for the light.